anyway, that is my partner in crime, Megan Flanagan, who is also tech hosting this meeting. So just if we have any tech issues, one of the two of us will try to help you. So just to be clear at the outset, this meeting is a forum for our discussion. Our task force has not yet developed an actual plan that we're presenting to you tonight. What we want to do first is tell you about some of the issues that we've been considering, tell you about the survey that we did and why we've done the survey. And then we really want to hear from you about what you think are the most important issues that we need to tackle so that we can develop a plan or a plan of options for the Board of Selectmen to consider to bring to a town vote to deal with the serious connectivity issues that we have in town. I wrote some of my notes down because I don't want to forget anything. I want to start tonight's meeting with just a few housekeeping items regarding Zoom, because not everybody is real familiar with it. Then I'm going to give you a little background on our group. Then Megan is going to discuss just briefly our survey, how it came to be done, and some of the highlights of what we found. And then First Selectman Brent Colley is going to share his current thinking, and then we'll open it up to everybody's questions. So first, the housekeeping. You know, through the wonders of technology, we are all here, but most of us are working with less than optimal setups. And so there might be some technical glitches, and Megan and I will try to address those, but please be patient and know that some things might be out of our control. I'm also trying to record the meeting so that people who couldn't participate can watch it later, and I'll let you know if that works. You may be on this call using a computer or a tablet or a smartphone or just calling in from a landline. Those of you who are calling in are going to have a harder time participating because we can't see you. But if you are looking at a screen of the call, you can choose what sort of view you want to have, either speaker view or gallery view, where you can see like little postage stamps of everybody on the call. And on a computer, the way you control that is with the view icon in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Everyone is muted now, but we will ask you to unmute if you want to ask a question or offer a comment later on. When to unmute, you basically go down on a computer to the left, lower left of your screen, where you'll see a little microphone. It should have a little red line through it right now, and you can click that to unmute yourself. If you have a question or comment that you'd like to share with people before then, there is a chat function. So if you see it on a computer again on the bottom of your screen, you can click chat and a little window will open up where you can type a message that you need help with something or you have a question, and we'll either get to the question during question and answer, or if there's something that we need to address right away, Megan and I will try to keep an eye on that chat box. When it is time for questions, you can either physically raise your hand if you are on with your video and we'll, call on people, or there is a raise hand function in Zoom, and you find that again on a computer in the lower list of little options. There's something called participants. If you click on that, a box will open up, you will see your name, and next to it, you will see an option to quote, raise hand. And so we can also monitor those so you can participate in the discussion. We'll get to as many questions as we can. And if we don't know the answer, we'll say we don't know the answer, we'll add it to our list and we'll get back to you when we know more. So that's it for the Zoom housekeeping. Let me just quickly introduce the members of the Sharon Connect Task Force. Not all of them could be on the call tonight. In addition to me and Megan, there are Barbara and Brent Prindle, John Brett, Linda Nyberg, Patrick Galloway, Beth Ribzik, Rosemary O'Brien, and Roger Lurie. The task force was formed about a year ago, around the time that Jessica Fowler stepped down from her selectman seat. Jessica had been a driving force in town for addressing how to improve broadband, and our group came together so that we could keep pushing forward on this issue by helping the selectmen decide whether to propose a town-wide solution or whether a majority of residents would prefer to keep trying to improve their own connectivity in a personal, piecemeal way, like banding together with our neighbors to pay for wiring down a particular road. Many of us have done these individual workarounds. They are not cheap and they are not easy. And a town-wide solution will not be cheap and it will not be easy. All the members of the Sharon Connect Task Force, like me, are volunteers. And our only dog in this hunt is to try to help the town make the best decisions it can about its future. We want to gather all the relevant information and answer everyone's questions so that in a town meeting, we can all vote in an informed way with our eyes open about what we want to see happen. Brent's first ask to our task force was to find out if a majority of town residents really wanted the town to address the issue. Like, why go through all this work if it's just going to get voted down? So that's why our first step was to do a survey, which many of you participated in. I'm going to turn it over to Megan now, and she's going to explain how the survey was done and highlight some of the results. Megan?
Thanks, Jill. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share it just so if anybody hasn't really had a chance to take a look at it or would like to look at it while we're talking about it.
Hey, Megan, is there a way to just up your volume a little bit?
Not really. If I sit closer and I talk louder. Better? Okay, great.
Thank you.
So I am sharing the survey. You all should see that now. And I think Jill explained what the purpose of this survey was and what we were trying to collect here and gather on residents of Sharon in particular. I think many of you may have noticed when the survey was live online, we were also sharing with Region 1. At the time, the Region 1 school district was also looking to collect this information. And since we had a survey built, we offered for them to also complete the survey. The results you're looking at here are solely the town of Sharon. So we were very specific in isolating that out. And you'll see that we did get 551 responses, which in our opinion, was really excellent. That's roughly half, or if not a little bit more, of our residents in town. So we thought that was very positive. So, some of the things that really jumped out for us were what your internet connection was in town. I actually was a little surprised that we had so many people on Comcast, because I thought it was a little bit worse than that. But I think in general, this is a good representation of what kind of connectivity we are seeing in town. But really the biggest thing that jumped out, I think, for this task force in particular was where we were at with whether or not there was an interest in actually doing something more. So even if you had Comcast, and you'll see that in some of the results up farther here when we're looking at what type of connection you have, even if you had it, you weren't necessarily happy with it. So these 3 slides cover what kind of connection you have, what your feelings were on your internet provider, and then this last slide combines those two. And so even if you have a decent connection, we are finding that a lot of people are either unhappy with the service entirely and the price, or just unhappy with the price. So there's, a lot of us are feeling like there could be something better, even if we have a decent connection at this point. And so those were some of the things that sort of jumped out at us as far as the current internet connection is. And then also the support for potentially doing something else, right? It's not necessarily installing a fiber optic network, although, that's sort of where everybody has been looking to as far as high-speed internet. But it is pretty clear that everyone is in support of something better, because we're all struggling in one way or another. And so that was a really interesting number for us, a very strong number for us. And then the other thing was the inconsistency of cell service in the area. So I think we all know that there's a lot of dead zones, but it's much more prevalent or obvious in the results when you're looking through the survey, and whether or not you feel that the area is inconsistent, and then whether or not you have good service at your home. And you see, really, green is not a good representation color. I think it speaks more positively, but that's a huge number for people who have very poor service or no service in their home. And that's pretty significant. I think we all felt that after the storm recently, when we all were not able to get on the internet and use Wi-Fi calling. If you're using a cell phone, were not able to connect at all. And in an emergency situation, that's just unacceptable. So that was very significant to us. And then, obviously the number is pretty huge on the residents who think we need to have more reliable cellular service. And so there's a lot of pieces that come with the cellular service. It's not really the same animal, although they're very related to, increasing our capability from a connectivity standpoint, obviously. So that was very significant. And then very lastly, I just want to sort of note, it is noted here in the materials, but the download and upload speeds, I think, this is really a fail on my part when I built out the survey. I really should have just asked for a range, because I was getting numbers that were just very wild. So you couldn't really graph this out in a way that was easy enough to read in a quick slide. And I had to go through each of the numbers and really put them into buckets. And I think, for anyone out there, I see Gary on the call. If you're going to do a survey, or if you're thinking about collecting upload and download speeds, definitely go at it in a bucket scenario instead of an open field, because that was, I would get comments, I would get numbers that were all over the place. So it's hard to, if you're trying to just sort of represent your data in a graph, having an open text field for that is obviously not helpful. So.
Right. I guess the one thing I would just comment there, Megan, is that especially on the download speeds on Comcast, they advertise 300 megabits per second, and very few people are getting anywhere close to that.
True. Very true. Very good point, Jill. Very good point. And I think, you can get it if you're sitting right next to a main artery from Comcast and you're one of the first houses in the line of service. But as as we all know with the town, as you sort of spider out and you get on back road and it starts to, expand, and you have more homes and more people and more devices, that will drop pretty dramatically, pretty quickly.
So, all right. So is there anything else, Megan, you wanted to go over?
That was it for me.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much. So in looking at those next steps, we started to develop some ideas for next steps, which we've been talking about for a while. So let me just go over those with you. For an immediate next step, we have been reaching out to residents who have experience in finance and telecommunications. And we're hoping to be able to form 1 or 2 working groups of volunteers who can evaluate specific technology and finance options. We're also looking for opportunities to pool resources and work with other towns, but we aren't expecting to do a kind of master plan of our whole region, because every town is different. And for a number of years, there was a lot of effort through Northwest Connect to try to come up with a region-wide solution. And, here we are today with, nothing built yet. So what are the options going forward? I just want to go over the 2 most prominent options that could provide town-wide technology solutions. The first would be to have the town partner with a private company or companies to wire all of Sharon with fiber optic lines. That would build a super fast network that can provide all the bandwidth that families would need for distance learning, remote work, Zoom calls like this, streaming television, games, and perhaps if some of the poles are outfitted with microtransmitters, we could offer cell service in our dead zones. Now, there are many issues about that, and we have to nail them all down. A back of the envelope calculation that Northwest Connect did a couple of years ago is that building out a fiber network in Sharon would cost roughly $7 million. Some or all of that would have to be funded by the town. And that would depend on what kind of business partnership agreements and grants that we would be able to get. And something like that would likely take a couple of years to actually finish. The town of Norfolk is indeed moving forward on they've planned a town vote for May next year on building a total fiber optic network for them. This is the same option that's also been researched by Northwest Connect for a number of years, and we've built on their research on that. So that's possibility one. Possibility two would be to have the town work with Comcast. That's the cable company that already serves about 2/3 of our residents on a build out plan to cover the neighborhoods like in South Ellsworth, where there is no cable connection, no wire for it. This could likely be done much more quickly and at lower cost. But Comcast is only to the home, Comcast is only using coaxial cable, not fiber. And so its network isn't as fast as fiber, and it would not have the ability to expand its bandwidth without a major infrastructure investment here, which they do not really have much of an incentive to do. Unlike what some people think, Comcast is under no obligation to wire all of Sharon. And they have been unwilling to even talk to Brent or any of us until earlier this year, because our town is so small and so spread out and difficult to service. And it's not cost effective for them to build out here without residents paying for all the costs of the wiring, which some of us have done. So other options, you know, a lot of people have Frontier. Frontier is unlikely to be any kind of player in our future. They're in bankruptcy. They don't really have the funding to do much, and they have been unwilling to provide upgraded service on lines in the region. Several of you I know have contacted, well, at least two of you have contacted me about possible upgrades of Frontier, and we're not getting any response from them. Satellite providers have not proven to be able to provide reliable, robust connectivity here, given our trees, our hills, our valleys. The task force is keeping abreast of the low orbit multi-satellite plan that's being developed by Elon Musk of SpaceX and Tesla car fame, and that's in beta testing. The three big cell phone companies, you know, they have been unwilling to really expand their services in our area, except to provide, you know, Wi-Fi hotspots. So, but we're going to reach out to them again to see what they want to offer. So what the task force would like to do is draft a request for proposal for the town to issue that would ask bidders to provide an engineering or feasibility study and business plan for building a fiber network for the town, and that these partners would build it, maintain it, operate it, provide the services over the system. This would give us something to compare to any build out proposals we get from some of our current providers like Comcast. So some of the main questions that have to be answered, and these questions came from one of you who's on the call today to see if these could get answered. And my response was, we're not answering them, but these are the right bottom line questions that we want to be able to answer. One, who will be our broadband provider if we build a new network, or if it's Comcast? What if it is Comcast, then what are the monthly costs? What are the speeds? Are there any data caps? Two, who is responsible for the connection from the road to the house? What will that cost be? Three, what media technology will be used from the road to the house? Will it be fiber? Will it be coaxial cables? Four, would the improved cell service, like how would that be done? Would 5G be part of that? Who would provide that? And five, how will Sharon pay for this new infrastructure? And will it require an increase in our taxes? These are all really good questions. And what we've been finding by looking at what's happening in other towns, not so much in Connecticut, but elsewhere in the country and in Massachusetts, is that there's a whole menu of options for financing and for partnerships that we would like to start to explore. But before we, what I'd like to do now is ask Brent, who has been knee deep in this and so supportive of our task force, as have the other selectmen as well. I'd like Brent to say a few words about his current thinking, and then we'll open it up for questions. Brent, so you're going to need to unmute yourself.
How's that?
Perfect.
That work? Okay. And I had to unvideo myself because we don't have really good, connectivity here at Town Hall either, which is a problem. we couldn't do what we've done so far without your help. So I want to thank the task force and all the members and the volunteers of what you guys have done. This is huge in terms of moving this project forward, and we appreciate it. And this is what we really need to, make this real. So, I mean, tonight, obviously we have 3 pages of individuals. We have over 50 people here on a Zoom call with questions and comments and concerns maybe. And knowing that and hearing that is exactly what we need as a Board of Selectmen and a Board of Finance. And everything goes to the town. So the fact that so many people here in town are interested in this is a very positive thing. Obviously, for those of us who have been here and we know what we have and don't have, we know that we need better in terms of broadband. So this is a good, not only a start, but a launch point. So I'm interested to be in the mix here to listen to what you have to say. Obviously, you guys have been here. You've been here for almost 25 minutes. So what you have to say, your concerns, what you need is what we need to know so we can help you. Obviously, Comcast is the main provider here in our town. And, we're somewhat, connected, but we're not totally connected. And, we've been doing a lot of work on your behalf to find that out. I mean, this map here is something that I've been working on for the last week to find out just ownership of poles, because we don't even know that. And that's something that's not even shared with us. So because I'm across your roads practically every day to check their condition, I've been making note of, who owns the poles. And what I've learned just in the past 3 days alone is that it goes back and forth in some locations. So, that kind of information is what we're trying to gather to make this process better and help us to communicate with the companies that may want to help us. But then moving forward, if they don't want to help us, then giving the companies that want to help us to, jump above them to know what they need to do. So I think, that's where we're at. We obviously asked the task force to do this work for us. They've done a great job, but right now, from this point forward, I want to hear from you guys. And it's not easy because it's Zoom and there's a lot of us, but I think that's the theme tonight is find out, what's in your head and, what you expect, and it could be anything, but just share with us your experience in terms of where you live or what you expect to pay, or, anything in terms of this topic would be helpful for us to move forward to help you. That's what we're here for, to help you.
Thank you so much, Brent. And thank you again to everybody who's on the task force and everybody who's on the call. And I'm not exactly sure, Megan, if people now just click to unmute themselves and ask questions. If
Everybody should be able to unmute. I would suggest that we do a hand raise instead, just so we can keep it a little more orderly, and then I can unmute you. So if you'd like to ask a question, there's also the chat window. So I'm happy to read things out loud to the group, however you all feel most comfortable. And if I think we only have a small trickle on the phone.
Yeah. A lot of people don't have video though, so that would be the thing. So, all right, so we'll try, let's see. Is there anybody who we can see who wants to raise their hand?
Or
oh, yes.
There we go. Yeah.
Scott?
Yeah.
Okay.
I got him, Jill.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
you can.
Okay, great. I just had a question. Are there any other towns in the area that are illustrative of what we aspire to, that we can copy or learn from?
Well, right now, Norfolk is trying to do its own broadband fiber optic network, but they are in the, they've gone further than any of us have gone in towns, but they are they still got a ways to go, and they're trying to prepare for a town vote.
And they're much bigger, huh?
Pardon?
that a much bigger town?
No. It's roughly, it's a little smaller. It's about a 25-minute drive from here. In Western Massachusetts and in part of New York, there have been some fiber build outs, but both of those states had very lucrative state grants to help with that. A couple of the companies that we have been in touch with have helped with those, have performed those build outs. So we are in touch with them. One town whose experience we will not copy is Groton, Connecticut, which basically built back in like 2008 or 10 years ago, built out its own broadband internet service and network. And they've spent tens of millions of dollars. And they're going to have to sell it off for like $150,000 now because they just can't afford to do that. So Sharon is not attempting to follow that model. We are not attempting to build and maintain and provide all the services and create a giant infrastructure. What we want to do is partner with companies that know how to engineer this, know how to build it, know how to maintain it, and will offer services.
Great.
But unfortunately, Scott, there isn't any local towns that I know of that have done this and we can just follow in their footsteps. So one of the things that's happening is that we are kind of forging our own way here.
Okay, thank you.
Ruth, I do see you. I did have Brian who, did you? Nope. Okay, Brian, we're going to skip you. We'll go right to you, Ruth. I'm just going to, yeah, unmute you.
Hi,
There we
everybody.
go.
My name's Ruth. I live on South Ellsworth, which was mentioned by one of you earlier. I currently have Frontier, which is a big improvement over Hughes that I used to have, but it's still not very good for a lot of my needs. I just have a question, which is this. A friend of mine lives in Millerton and got, there's some New York State program where they can basically mandate an extension of wiring to an individual's home. Has there been any exploration of trying to get the state of Connecticut to do stuff like that? Or have you, I mean, I just wonder if there's any avenue in that direction that you guys have explored, and if not, maybe it's something to consider. And thank you for doing everything you've done, by the way. I really appreciate this effort.
Okay, thank you. It's a great question. I'm gonna say one thing, and then Brent, I don't know if you want to jump in because you may know more about this than I do. Brent, you go ahead.
Yeah, at the moment, there's no state grants. If we got any grants at all, it would come from the federal level. And based on what we know right now, that would take 2 to 3 years. So
Yeah.
there's no state buy-in on that level right now.
But Brent, what about the idea of the state mandating that Comcast must build out the rest of Sharon? Is there any push on that? Because there was a franchise agreement in Connecticut years ago that required that kind of community build out. But the legislature and the governor years ago, basically, because of deregulation, as I understand it, removed that requirement, which I do believe is still in New York State. So that's the reason why there are a lot of people in Sharon when I was first dealing with this who were frustrated at Comcast because they were saying, well, Comcast isn't living up to its bargain in the franchise agreement. And what we came to learn was that no, there is no agreement, that they are not under any obligation by the state to build anything they don't want to build. And whether, Brent, I know you've talked to people in the Office of Corporation Counsel. Is there any thought there that they may try to lean on some of the franchise holders now to build out in places like Sharon?
The law would have to be changed. Right now, the current state law doesn't allow Pura to order Comcast to build out the rest of Sharon. So, Comcast has built out their contract. So Pura is not giving them any pressure, and we'd have to change the state law through the legislature to do so.
So basically, Ruth, don't wait for the state to save us. We got to do this on our own.
Thank you. We might want to push them to do it though, because it's not just Sharon, it's the many other places,
You
right?
know, absolutely. And I'll add that to a list of things to do to continue to push on that.
Yes, Deborah was just chatting with all of us and was asking about the Northwest Council of Governance as well to see if there's anything we can do, if we can get some help from them, if we can push it from that direction as well. So.
Right. All right, who else has a question? Okay, you said, how about Alden and then Thomas?
And then we do have Nate on the chat as well. So Alden, yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to say I'm not, I mostly live in Salisbury, but part of our farm is in Sharon, so I pay some taxes in Sharon. My first point is, thanks very much to the task force. It's fantastic that you've done this work. Second, it seems to me that this is a matter of equity. I mean, we've just got to knock down the digital divide because for the most part, I mean, some of us can afford connectivity, maybe not the perfect connectivity, but there are a lot of people, students, who just can't afford it because they live a long distance away. And so I think we need to keep that in mind. I do think that although I would expect that the state and ultimately the federal government will move on this, I think that you're absolutely right. It will take a while for that to happen. And I think it's important to move ahead in, you know, if this can be done in a couple of years, I think it's valuable to do it. I would think that if several towns, cities, the Council of Governments or whatever could get together, they could put more pressure on Comcast or any other organization and set up a bidding war like any other company. They're going to do it if they have a lot of customers.
Yeah.
So anyway, those are my points. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's so, yeah, I hear exactly what you're saying. Let me just say one thing about a potential bidding war. I think that is also probably not going to happen. One of the, there's a group of towns in Connecticut, in Massachusetts, I'm going to get them wrong, Chicopee and two others, like right around Mount Holyoke. And the three of them, those three towns were wired for fiber. And they had a dominant provider there, Comcast, which is very similar to our situation. And the wiring for fiber, they got 40%, roughly 30 to 40% of the towns to go to the fiber network. And the rest of the people stayed with Comcast. But Comcast did not lower their service costs or improve service at all. They did not compete. They just allowed this other service to come in there. What we've noticed, like there's, we have seen no interest whatsoever in any big company to compete with another big company here. I don't know, Brent, you may want to say something else about that. Just because we're so spread out and we just don't have the density and the number of households that they can pick up enough customers to make it worth their while to fight anybody. Brent?
No, yeah, that's true. Obviously, if you look at a map and who's in each town, Charter ends at Kent, Comcast is here, down below on Cornwall Bridge is Division. And we've reached out to all of them and they don't want to jump the line. And I don't know if that's an agreement with each other or what, but we don't seem to have enough homes to make, it attractive enough for them to compete here. And we've gone in every single direction possible. I actually have friends that work for Charter in Stanford that would, they couldn't even help. So we have what we have currently. So, that's the situation that we're in. There's not really a competitive environment here. at least in our region.
Right.
Because, we just don't have the density. I mean, think about it, like now we're kind of changing, like, yes, we have more people here now than ever, but up until this point in time, it just doesn't make sense to them as a business to compete against each other.
Right. Yeah, not only do we not have the density, but we're so spread apart and we're so rocky that we are a construction nightmare as well.
Right.
We had Thomas and then Joe is the order I'm seeing right now.
It was mentioned earlier that Norfolk has been involved in this process for quite a while now, and we'll have a vote in May. What business model are they proposing to be voted upon?
They are proposing what's it called, like an open network model. So they are partnering with a Connecticut company called Certex that would actually build the infrastructure, and an internet service provider called Crocker Communications that would provide the actual internet ISP service over those lines once they're built. They are financial partners with Norfolk. My understanding is that Norfolk would do a bond issue of roughly $5.6 million to fund that, to pay Certex to build and maintain the network. And then they would partner with Crocker to provide the ISP services. So that's the kind of model that if we were to do a fiber build out here, that's probably what we would probably also be looking to do.
Thank you.
Okay, and Joe I have next, and then Howard, and then we have a couple of questions in the chat from Nate and Kristen and Deborah I'd like to get to, so we'll let you go, Joe.
Okay, yes, I thank you very much for doing this. I'm so thrilled. It's been many, many years that I've been struggling at the end of Fairchild Road, where I've lived for over 40 years now. We tried many different things, finally gave up on the telephone company. Comcast wouldn't come the last mile unless we paid for cable the entire mile of the road plus to the house ourselves. There aren't many households on the road, but there are in this last mile. Currently I have HughesNet, but it's very poor. I work here, it's very difficult. Keeping in touch with family. But I have a question. Is Sharon, Sharon seems to have a very large area and many, many small remote roads going to just a few households. Is it more difficult in this town than say Salisbury, Falls Village and so on? Are we more spread out? Do we have a larger area and fewer households or less density?
I'll let Brent answer that. I think I think that this whole region, so my sense is that we're all kind of in the same boat, just right here. And there's no place that has a lot of density. And Cornwall is very much like us in that way too, is that we're very spread out and there's a lot of dirt roads and a lot of people kind of in the middle of nowhere, which is delightful on one hand, but for this particular issue, it has been an unsolvable problem.
One thing, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, one thing, I work for a telecom company, so maybe I could add to value.
Could you just introduce yourself?
My name is Eric Simon. Sorry
Eric
for
Simon.
that.
Okay.
I apologize.
Okay, thank you, Eric.
And I think one issue is density is a big factor in that, and to the extent that Salisbury is a little more dense or has more people close to main arteries, I think that makes an issue in terms of being able to cost effectively deploy broadband. Because the more you have to dig away from a main artery, that's going to be really expensive. And just the other thing is about Charter and other players. I think in any town, the cable companies don't compete against each other. They have a local franchise. So Comcast has a franchise for Sharon. And so a Charter or someone else couldn't come in to compete against Comcast because they don't have a franchise to offer service here.
Thanks, Eric. I was actually going to ping you and Chris for this very reason, maybe later this week. So if I could follow up with you, that would be great.
Yeah.
Great. Good.
Sorry
So,
for interrupting there.
That's okay, no problem. So we had Howard next, and then like I said, we have some chat questions I'd like to get to. So Howard, go ahead.
Yes, hi. So a couple of months ago, I understood that Comcast was suggesting that they might put together a proposal for wiring up part of the South Ellsworth area, and they were going to come back with a proposal. Did they ever do that?
We're still waiting for it.
So,
We're hoping to get it this month, within the next 2 weeks.
So there has been some discussion with them about what they're proposing?
Correct, yep.
Can you give us some idea of what their thinking is?
Well, I don't know what their thinking is, but our thinking is that, you know, your section of town, Ellsworth, that whole rectangle from, you know, the top of Ellsworth Hill all the way down to River Road, you know, is probably the worst dark area that we have in town. And we could open up a lot of people just in that rectangle. So, you know, what's the holdup? They did East Street last. There's, you know, lines up to Northrop down below on Route 4. So, you know, what is the holdup to expanding that into the Ellsworth section? So they were going to give us a cost or a proposal to cost for that section. And that was going to come sometime before December 15th. I'm still waiting for it. But, you know, what I've been doing on my own is trying to figure out, you know, what's the environment. And, you know, what I've noted in just doing my own research is that in that section of town, we bounce back and forth between Eversource and Frontier lines in terms of the poles. That may have nothing to do with the problem or the process, but that could be a holdup. I don't know. But that's something that's very unique in that part of town that I have not seen yet in any other part of town. But they could come back with a proposal, and then as a town, we could see, you know, what the cost is, and, you know, to open up that section of town and cell service in that section of town would be substantial. So we're waiting, we're hoping.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brent.
You can be pretty sure though that they're gonna want to do it the way they want to do it, and, you know, cost effective to them. So
Well, the problem that I had with what I heard about the proposal was that each resident was going to have to basically pay in to get them to extend the hub out to the various homes. And I find that repugnant, personally, that we should have to pay them to do that, and they own they own the infrastructure.
that's their model, Howard. I mean, I live on a road that's 3/4 of a mile long, and they said, "Oh, we'll give you service," and then they said, "But we want to charge you $20,000 to run a line up the road." And I thought I just thought that's not right.
That's absurd.
And the worst part is it's coax, it's not fiber optics that they're running.
right.
And
So-
that's something to keep in mind with copper wire, with cable, is imagine a three lane highway, and imagine an entrance ramp every 50 feet, and everybody's trying to get on that highway. So
Right.
Sunday night, you want to stream a movie on Netflix, you're competing with all your neighbors.
Exactly.
So I will say, Howard, that there is also a private attempt to engage Comcast in your area. So it sounds a little bit like there might be some confusion between those two different proposals. You know, I will say personally, I'm on a private road, and we this year engaged Comcast directly and paid them out of pocket, and it was the best decision we've ever made. So understandably, Comcast is miserable. But when your alternative is to limp along with satellite, if you're lucky enough to be able to afford it, or with a hotspot, if you're lucky enough to be able to not get removed from the hotspot because you're abusing it, or you know, have connectivity issues with that hotspot. There's some balance there where you have to kind of figure out what, you know, what's the lesser of two evils. And so, but I do think, Howard, I think you may be mixing those two proposals, because there is basically, at the end of the day, what everybody's trying to do is just needle Comcast from every direction, because we do, and actually to Kristen's point in here, Kristen was asking a question earlier, don't we need 21st century fiber optic broadband for our schools and our children? And I think everybody agrees that we need to have high speed, and we shouldn't be limping along with anything, and including coaxial. You know, at the end of the day, I do think that if we are, for those of us who do have Comcast, and for those of us who just paid out of pocket to have them come in and put, you know, antiquated coaxial in, at some point, technology is going to advance so much that Comcast won't be able to service its customers on copper wire, and they'll be forced to do some sort of upgrade. You know, unfortunately, we'll probably be the last in the line of upgrades, and that's not the answer. Let's wait for them to, you know, be falling behind. But again, I would just sort of point to the fact that, yeah, Kristen, I think we all agree that we should be able to connect without all this drama. We should all have 300 to start download. We should all have the ability to upload. You know, I mean, I think all of us have maybe 3 megs to upload. It's really sad. But some of us don't even have that ability right now. So it's just pretty miserable. I also wanted to say, Nate Stallman had a question. He said, thank you for all your personal efforts here. As part of your analysis, have you come across data on real estate value preservation enhancement for the town with the best in class broadband? I personally haven't, but that was part of the discussion with my own private road. You know, resale is a lot tougher when you don't have any way to connect to the internet around here. So, but I think Brent, you might be able to add to that, and maybe Jill, you have something to add to that too.
I mean, I would open that up to anyone who's in real estate. I mean, they would know best. I would think that it would be an asset to anyone moving up here, especially people that are moving here from Brooklyn or Manhattan. Obviously, you know, whether you're living there and here, having that technology, being able to turn on your lights or your heat or whatever as you're on your way up here, but also now with security, you know, video, knowing what's going on at your house. It's becoming more and more important as the COVID now is in place. So I would think that it would be a benefit to anyone who's looking at property up here. But I would definitely default to anyone in the real estate arena that would know better than I. But for me, I mean, I think it's definitely a positive.
And I guess I'll just add that that'll be something that our committee, when we're doing our financial analysis, that's definitely something that we're going to want to look at, because, you know, you guys are articulating so well the state that we're in. You know, our option in Sharon now, really, if you want high-speed internet, is either to pay Comcast for the pleasure of them building their own infrastructure on your dime to get to your house so that you can pay them monthly for their service. And there is no leverage there. There is no other option, really, unless the town, and this meeting I think is very encouraging that way. The town could decide that we are doing our next major capital infrastructure investment. And we are building a road all through Sharon that only has to get built once. And it is fiber optic, and it is a big capital investment. That's why our task force felt like now, if not now, when, to do a serious study of how much would it cost? How could, you know, what would happen to the mill rate? Who could be our partners? That's why there's so much emphasis placed on the fiber optic, because nobody wants to compete here. We're not, despite how wonderful we all are, you know, we're not the middle of New York City. You know, we just do not have the kind of potential to earn them the money that they need to earn as you know, publicly traded companies. So
Oops, sorry.
And on that note, our demographics are changing. You know, there's an influx of people now coming in, and there's, you know, there's younger people coming in. There's going to be more families. And it used to be, we used to speak about this a couple of years ago as being some sort of a, you know, a desirable thing to have. Now it's kind of it's really come down to being a necessity. And as Jill just said, this is a road we need to build. We only need to build it once, but we do need to do this. And what time is better than now? Because I can tell you this, 5 years from now, it'll cost more than it does today.
and we can just look at this feasibility study and the costs, and we can make a decision as a town. Do we want to make this investment, or do we want everybody to go along, to continue going it alone? And the people who can't afford to pay Comcast for the, you know, to run a line to their house, they'll continue to do that, and everybody else will just have to limp along the way that we've been limping along for the last 5-6 years.
I have Howard again, and then Scott, and then I have a couple of chat questions. So Howard, I'll let you go.
Thanks, Megan. So the question that I had was, in the course of the survey that you did, how many of the respondents as a percentage of the total already have Comcast? Do we know that?
We had that slide. It's something, I'd have to go back and look, but it's,
The reason I ask is, for those residents that already have Comcast, why would it be in their interest to vote for a fiber optic study when it may down the road cost them additional money for a service that they already have?
that's right. So one would be the whole idea that the coax cable that they have to their house is not going to be able to be sufficient in the years to come. And in order for that to be upgraded would be a major capital investment on Comcast's part. And our town would maybe never get that major upgrade. So they may be stuck with in 5 years, let's say, obsolete technology. The second would be, just as the town itself, if we would be one of the first towns, maybe the first town in our part of Connecticut, just 2 hours from New York City and 3 hours from Boston, to have fiber optic network 1 gigabit up and down to every house, including the one at the end of Fairchild Road. It would be a game changer in terms of getting people to move here and making it possible for families to basically raise a family here. So there is a kind of community. What is the community you want to live in? Do you want to live in a barbell community of rich old people and young people who have to, you know, who work for those people who have to live an hour away because they can't afford it, or they can't even afford to do, you know, work at their house because there's no internet? Or do we want a vibrant community like, you know, our hospital? Our hospital is still, you know, potentially going to close its maternity ward because there aren't enough young families here to keep the volume up. You know, if we could build something like this, I think it would really be something that could lift all boats, and we could build a community of you know, just multi ages and start to get some vibrancy, which actually in some ways with COVID, we are, you know, there are more kids in the schools.
I agree with you. I think we need to do that now. I think we need to bring it to the town. I think doing the engineering study will give us the information we really need to delve into this and make a good decision.
But Howard, to your point about Comcast customers already existing and wanting to just keep things the way they are, that's probably true. In Jill's opening statement, she mentioned up in Massachusetts that the take rate was, you know, 40, 50, 60%. That's why it's not 80, because people are comfortable with what they have. what we've always had in Sharon in this area before it became a necessity is if you could afford to say pay the Comcast $20,000 to run a line up your road, you did it. And you basically sat there and said, I got mine. What am I worried about all this for? But for the greater good and for the future of where we can go and where we are, I think, we have to think about this road.
Right.
I agree.
Definitely.
And to answer that question, it's 59% of the respondents have Comcast.
59.
59.
Ooh.
So a lot. But to everyone else's point, if we can get a competitive price, at least with the fiber, there's a good chance that it could, as long as it's easy to switch over and all that, there's a lot of pieces. But so we had Scott next. I'm going to go ahead and do you want me to unmute you, Scott? Hold on.
I just did it. I just had a quick question. I mean, I'm a Comcast subscriber and I have high speed. I'm on the town green, but I would certainly vote for a fiber optic network. I think it's a community obligation. It's for the health of and future of the town. But my question, I guess, is how much money does the town have? If it's going to cost $7 million, what does the town have in its treasury? Like, can they tap a partial amount of that, and then will the towns in a vote support spending the rest of it?
I think that depending on how we would finance it, I'll let Brent speak to that, but probably the bulk of it would be, long-term, low-cost bonds. I don't know, Brent, do you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, so we've done it before. We did it with roads in 2009, 2010. And about the same cost. So $7 million to do about 40 miles of roads. And the impact of that was around starting 2014, the debt payments started, which were about $700,000 a year. So far, they've dropped down to about $500,000 a year. And by 2026, they'll be zero. So we have funded with bonding infrastructure that were roads back then. We could, plausibly do that now with fiber, and so it's doable. What we're looking at now is because we're down to about 2 or 3 roads left to pave overall in town. If Comcast were on board to build us out fully, would we be willing to do the same that we do every year in the town budget, which is roughly budget $200,000, $300,000 a year to fully broadband out the areas that are currently dark. It's not fiber, it's not perfect, but it's possible, it's cheaper. But yeah, it's a possibility, and that's why having 50 plus people on this call is huge as a first selectman for me. This is the discussion that we need to have right now to move forward to make the best decision for us as a town. Because yeah, we could build this out, and but there's a lot of question marks in terms of timeline and cost. So it's good to really do what we're doing right now tonight.
Great. We have a number of questions in the chat that we have yet to get to. So I wanted to just read a couple of them off if I could, unless you have something to add, Jill.
And Megan, let me just say one thing. So it is 7 o'clock, so it's been an hour. I'm happy to keep going on the call and answer questions, but just to make everybody mindful of that. So if you need to drop off, text me or email me or something, and we'll tell you what happened after this.
Great. So we just had a comment from Brian and Tracy that we needed to save lives, and I think we all agree on that, especially after the recent storm, that we all need to be able to connect. Laura asks, she says, thank you for all your efforts. It's appreciated. Do we anticipate whether there will be any companies responding to the RFP? I'm not sure if I understand if the issue is the how or the how we pay for it to ensure equitable access.
So I do think that we will have companies like Certex, which is the one that is on deck to do Norfolk. responding to the RFP. I've heard of from a few other companies as well. And these are, you know, smaller companies who have found that they find that they have a good niche in rural communities. So one of the, so I do think that there will be some interest here, and we've already had 2 or 3 companies that have expressed interest in what we wanted, what we're trying to build out.
Great. Okay, and so Deborah, I see you writing to me privately. I will respond to you in just a moment. Joe Wright says she would definitely vote for fiber optic. Thanks for investigating and working on this, everybody. Ruth Milkman, those who already have Comcast could switch to fiber optic once we have it. And so we were talking about that in the take rate as well. Joe Wright is telling us that she has friends in Alford, Mass. They described a process by which all households agreed on setting up the fiber optic, but many fewer households and possibly wealthier than Sharon. I agree this must be the future thinking for the younger people. Sergey, I believe it's pronounced, cellular. He's questioning about cellular, which I think is a good conversation. We haven't really jumped into that today. 5G has 100 upload. Is expanding cellular coverage a more cost-effective means for expanding connectivity?
So let me just say one thing about that, doing something like 5G, even if it's not 5G, requires fiber. So there is no way, even like we can't just build, we already have cell towers in Sharon that are underused because the big carriers don't necessarily want to put their equipment on them. So if we were to do a fiber network in Sharon, one of the things that we would put in the RFP would be to have our partners look at, could there be micro transmitters put on some of the poles that could provide cellular coverage.
Right. The other piece to that too, depending on the model that we're looking at for data plans with cellular, the cap limits are just, you know, peanuts compared to what you would get. Even Comcast, unfortunately, I think we were all pretty saddened to see that Comcast is talking about capping us. But their number of where they start to charge you more is significantly higher than you would get on a cellular plan. So from that perspective, and then when you're talking about, you know, even now with Comcast, you should be getting about 300 download speeds, and 100 is, you know, that's where you start to see a decent Zoom meeting on a hotspot, but it's still not great. One thing I did somehow miss you, Deborah Moore. She had asked a question about how does PURA knit into this, and I thought we could address that really quickly.
Okay, so PURA is the Public Utilities Regulatory Authority, and they, I think Sharon was a party to this lawsuit, Brent can correct me. They had issued a regulation that the towns would not be able to use the part of the pole that is called municipal gain, meaning the towns can use it for any purpose that they want. And PURA had a couple of years ago had ruled that no, towns, if they were going to set up their own fiber optic network, they were going to have to pay for that, and that got overturned. So that is no longer in force. So if we were to build fiber, if the town were to fund a fiber optic network, one of the things that PURA and the regulators would have to deal with is something called One Touch Make Ready, which is a way to, because if you're going to actually string a new wire on a pole, you have to examine that pole. Is there enough room to move the current providers who are on that pole to a place where you can string your wire? And there is, I know in other parts of the country, the current utilities and the current providers throw a lot of sand in the works to make that a very costly and drawn out process. So there is Norfolk, and this is one thing that the Northwest Hills Council of Governments and Northwest Connect are pushing on the state level, is to push for something called One Touch Make Ready, so that kind of delaying tactics would be ruled illegal. Brent, do you have anything else you want to say about PURA and its role in all of this?
Well, that's just it. And that's kind of my concern in Ellsworth, is that we have, a bouncing back and forth of Eversource and Frontier polls. So, we're not just dealing with one company in terms of, preparation of the poll. We could have easy access with Eversource, but if Frontier wants to, hold us up, they could. We bounce back and forth just on Kings Hill Road alone, like 3 or 4 times. So that's, that could be a problem. And that may be a reason why Comcast hasn't moved forward. So that's a puzzle piece that we need to, basically put out there and figure out. I hope it wouldn't be an issue. I mean, fiber's fiber. It's not really a big, thick cable. It's very thin. So based on, all the areas that I've been in, I don't see it as a problem. But if, a company wanted to, put the brakes on this concept, they could, just because of that. And that's based on, what I can see visually and just traveling to town, that could be a problem. And that could hold us up, 6 months, a year, 2 years. And that's, that's what we're trying to avoid. And that's why, in a lot of ways, partnering with Comcast at this moment in time to build out broadband is our best option, because it's one company. And in dealing with just one company, you deal with one problem. So, I think moving forward into the future, there's options, but in the present tense, Comcast is our best partner, and we need to figure out, and we need to find the right partner within that network to, build this out, because we're dark, whether it's cell service or broadband, we don't have it in certain areas, especially in Ellsworth. And Ellsworth has become our most popular area for new homes. So that's where, in the present moment, that's where a lot of the focus is. And I'm hopeful that, we'll get a good proposal from Comcast that all of us can look at and talk about.
Great. So Deborah asked, does Ed Wilbur know why this is?
Why, what is? Deb, can you unmute?
Hold on, you can't unmute, Deb? You want me to? There you go.
Okay. See, I already forgot what we were talking. Ed, I was just wondering what happened, because those were 2 different companies. Was it about when the power companies got bought up? I mean, how does that kind of thing happen?
What do you mean, the full ownership?
Full ownership, yeah. How does that happen? I was just wondering.
So AT&T was the original owner of most of the poles.
Oh.
And AT&T sold their phone operations to Frontier. In the meantime, as time was going on, Eversource started putting up poles too. So you have 2 different owners of poles. Is that what you're asking, Deb?
Yes, trying to understand that.
It was actually SNET, Southern New England Telephone.
Okay.
Right.
That's right.
So in our town, based on what I've, so once you come out of the main part of town, just below Hilltop, that's where the conversion from CLNP Eversource stops, Frontier begins, and that tends to run all the way to the border with Salisbury, and you'll get a jump back and forth in those in-between roads, like Weeds Dam and Rhinus, like Cole Road. Low Road is all Eversource, but then halfway through Cole Road and Rhinus, it changes back to Frontier or SNET. So it bounces back and forth. And the same thing with Jewett Hill and Jackson Hill. Jackson Hill, up until the point of where Q Farm is today, is Frontier, and then down below it's Eversource. So,
So that would be another thing that we could, as a town, could do, which is lobby the state legislature about one touch make ready. Because if they
Right.
could do that one touch make ready, then it doesn't matter who owns the poles as much. You know,
Right.
there
What
are
is-
60.
How do we find out what one touch, what is it called?
Deb, I'll send you a little fact about it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Do you see there's this question, Megan, from Bruce Crumley about there had been discussion at one point about Wi-Fi Max?
Right.
Is that at all a viable option? And I don't know about it. So does somebody know about it?
I don't either. I haven't heard of it at all.
Bruce, maybe you could unmute and tell us a little more about it. Maybe we should look into it. Let's see if he's still here. If he's not here, you know what I'll do? I will look.
Okay.
I'll look it up.
Here's when I had called, because we're on a small dirt road and everything here is just copper cable.
Right.
So I've been pursuing this for years. And at one point I was told by the township that there was some discussion that WiMAX would then be able to cover us here. But that's, that was several years ago. I never heard anything more. That's all I know. Sorry.
Okay. No. I mean, it's a great question because we should look up why people thought it was an option and why it went away, if it did. So, okay. I don't see any more questions in the chat.
And I don't see
anybody else have anything or, so the next steps are we will try to make this available, recording available, and any of you who either have experience in finance or telecom and want to join us and help sort through some of these issues that we raised here, please email me, jill@jilldrew.com, or our email address is sharonctconnect@gmail.com. Right, Megan?
I think so. I'll double check that. I can put it in the chat.
And I just want to thank everybody. These are just such great questions and for your interest. And I just have a lot of sense that maybe we really can do something this time. And again, my deep appreciation to Brent, because I do think he really wants to move this forward and do what the town wants to do to improve all of our connectivity. And not every first selectman around here feels the same way. So really hats off to you, Brent. Okay, so thank you guys so much. Really, really great meeting, and I'm gonna end this unless somebody, okay.
Thank you.